It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Matt Murphy. My first day back for surgery on my left shoulder. 2 weeks off, the longest stint that I've been off of the airwaves for the entirety of my career. I'm so glad to be back. Thank you for your kind words. We so appreciate you on this Monday, July 7. Nasty weather outside, moving through the area. It's through the downtown Nashville area, as has been reported by Ken Weaver and over there in the weather closet, but it looks to be still affecting some areas eastward. There was a ground stop earlier. Has the ground stop been lifted, Ken, or is that still under effect?
I have not seen that it has been lifted, so I think it's still on.
Some nasty stuff going through Murfreesboro right now. If you're listening to us a little south of Nashville proper, like you just had a pop out of Columbia, if you're in the Shelbyville area, it's coming your way. It's just thunderstorms, nasty weather, a lot of rain, maybe some lightning, a lot of wind. No tornadoes expected or reported out of this system that is moving through our area. But these pop-ups will continue. And, I mean, it's about to start back raining in Bellevue and Belmead and downtown Nashville. You're about to get a little more rain, too. So
ground stop lifted.
All right, there you go. Ground stop lifted. So congratulations. Your flight's now just delayed for 3.5 hours or whatever. All right. Well, more time for you to listen to us on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Bobo, get to you. Marshall, get to you in a moment. But right now, we turn our attention to the phone line where we interview people, which is the nifty name that I have for the phone line where we interview people, where Congressman John Rose, Congressman and gubernatorial candidate John Rose joins us, my first guest, well, the first guest ever for my brand new left shoulder. Hello, Congressman Rose. How are you?
Good afternoon, Matt. Thanks for having me on the Matt Murphy Show today.
Well, it's obviously a pleasure. Always good to talk with you, John. Let's. I know we got a couple of hats that I'm going to ask you to wear over the 15 or so minutes that we have together this afternoon. One of them will be Congressman John Rose, of course, and one of them will be gubernatorial candidate John Rose. Let's start with Congressman John Rose. The big, beautiful bill. It passed. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't everything. I was a little frustrated with our inability to convince some of our friends who are Republican to cut a little deeper into government spending. I'm just curious where you are on that front and your overall takeaway on the passage. I know you voted for it, and I know you applaud it. Give us your takeaway on the passage of the big, beautiful bill.
Well, first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't say that our hearts and prayers pour out to those folks in Texas who've lost loved ones and are recovering from the huge flooding that's happened there. And we know we've experienced that here in Tennessee, so we know what they're going through, and we wish the very best for them. And I know their local officials are working hard to help find survivors and console those who've lost family members. And just what a tragedy to see that happen in Texas. And so turning then to the one big beautiful bill, I will just say, the big takeaway here for me is that the one big beautiful bill delivers the largest tax cut for working and middle class Americans in history. And I think we have to just underscore that, because I think that's the starting place, because we know that the future of this country and getting ourselves out of the hole that we've dug is about growing the American economy. And the best way to do that is to incentivize Americans to pursue their entrepreneurial visions and dreams and to work hard and make this American economy grow robustly. So I think that's the starting point. And I think it's noteworthy to observe that every Democrat in the Congress, both the House and the Senate, voted essentially in favor of the largest tax increase for working Americans in history by casting their votes against the one big beautiful bill. And I think we could stop right there. If that's all this did, I think it would be such a huge win for our country. But you're right. The other thing that's worth noting is that, depending on the estimates, $1.5 to $1.7 trillion in budget cuts, by far the largest cuts ever in the history of the country. Now, is it enough? I think we could talk about that all day. For those who are conservative like me and want to see us get our federal spending under control, I would have liked to have seen us go further, and I think we could have and should have gone further. But we did get the largest cuts in history, and we hear often the analogy of comparing our country to a aircraft carrier and that it takes time to turn it, and we are beginning that turn. So there is more work to be done, and as I think you all know and your listeners know, We get two more cracks at this in this Congress if we make the most of the moment. So we get to do budget reconciliation two more times. And so I trust that we will come back at this and clean up some of the missed opportunities that we saw with this first bill. But it is a good start. And so that's where, I would be, Matt, is to say it's a good start. And then when you factor in all the other good things that are in this bill, the protections for those of us who have great faith in the Second Amendment as a protector of our rights, that we see here in this bill, that is great. The child tax credit for working families, that's great. The fact that we're putting money into working Tennesseans' pockets in a variety of ways, I think is good and will boost our economy. The fact that we're giving the president the resources he needs to complete the border wall and to provide the additional agents to secure our southern border and to continue the process of getting law-breaking illegal aliens out of our country. I think these are all big positives. The assistance that we get to farmers with a big chunk of the farm bill being embedded in the one big beautiful bill, I think all these are great accomplishments. And then turning back so many of the woke policies of the previous administration, taking out so many of the so-called Green New Deal provisions that were propping up and subsidizing energy sources and prohibiting Americans from producing energy right here in our own country. So when you take all that together, I think this is just a huge win for the American people.
Congressman John Rose with us this afternoon discussing the passage of the big, beautiful bill. You brought up from the top the tragedy in Texas, and there are some in the halls of Congress and in other political circles that are attempting, sadly, and I say it that way. I'm not even mad at these people anymore. I'm just sad for them, John, that are trying to politicize what happened in Texas, suggesting that because of the Republican Party, because of Donald Trump, that the funding levels aren't what they should be at the National Weather Service, aren't what they should be in terms of our forecasting ability, and that somehow affected the abilities for the local people in Texas to get information. How do you respond to these folks?
I think we see this every time there's an unprecedented tragedy, and I think anyone who assesses what happened here in Texas knows that this, I've heard various estimates that it's a once in 100 year, once in a 250 year, once in 1,000 year flood. To be certain, it was just, the worst possible outcome. It happened at the worst possible time of day. And it's a tragedy, and tragedies happen. We live in this time when so many people just don't want to accept that there are tragedies that occur, and the federal government's job is not to insulate you from bad things. Mm-hmm. And if you go about life expecting that Uncle Sam is going to be the cradle to grave security that keeps you from ever being hurt and provides you with everything you need in life, that you're going to live a very miserable life. And we don't want to see this country become like so many socialist so-called utopias where you depend on government for everything. And so tragedies are happening. We dust ourselves off. We pick ourselves up. We figure out how to hopefully avoid them in the future. But we also go about life knowing that bad things happen, and we try to do everything we can to prevent them, and we try to come to the aid of those who suffer the injuries of those bad things. But I think this is no time for politics to be entering into this. There are still, for goodness sakes, potential survivors that need to be found and rescued.
Correct. Congressman, obviously, we could spend, you and I, the next 2 hours. It is such a big bill and now a big law that we could spend a lot of time on the various aspects of the BBB. But I want to dig a little deeper into a couple of things you brought up. One talking point that seems to have emerged since our president signed the big, beautiful bill on at the White House on July 4th, amongst Democrats is that, millions of people are going to die due to a lack of Medicaid coverage, that, when you see or hear from a person on the political left on this matter, that's their go-to, that Medicaid cuts are going to cause death, dismay. I've heard as many as 9 hospitals in the state of Tennessee are going to close down. And I plan on dissecting this at length on the show, but I know you'll be asked about it from certain leftist media circles. What is your response, Congressman, when it is suggested that the cuts in Medicaid are going to cause harm to those that truly need it?
Well, I think this, again, is just fear-mongering on their part. So, let's start with SNAP, and I serve on the Ag Committee, and we're strengthening the work requirement for those people who received supplemental nutrition assistance. We would call that food stamps maybe if we were just using the term that is probably most recognized. Keep in mind that 72% of the working-age Americans that don't have dependents that are receiving SNAP benefits don't have a job. Now, there's no reason they can't have a job. They just don't have a job. And this law will give them the encouragement, if you will, the requirement that they go out and seek some productive activity in their lives. And that's where the benefits are, that's where the savings are being found, both with respect to SNAP and with respect to Medicaid. So again, in the Medicaid space, we've got 1.4 million illegal immigrants who are receiving Medicaid benefits. We've got 4.8 million able-bodied adults who refuse to work that are receiving benefits. And so the law that we've just passed, the One Big Beautiful Law, will actually encourage those people to go back to work. And you know what, Matt? What we find, and the data is overwhelming on this, is that when we kind of push those folks out of the nest and we get them back participating in the workforce, not only are they better off, not only is their health better and their families better, but their communities and the broader U.S. economy benefit as well. And so we're doing them a favor by encouraging them to go out and become productive. And ultimately, we're doing their families a favor, and we're doing the entire U.S. economy a favor. And so when people say, well, what are we going to do about the low job participation rate? This is part of the answer to that, is that these folks need we need to quit paying Americans not to work. And that's what this bill starts the process of doing. And I think it's going to be a big payoff. And those are where the primary savings are coming with respect to Medicaid and SNAP. And I hardly believe that those are provisions that are going to put our rural hospitals at jeopardy, that are going to put American lives at jeopardy. In fact, we're going to be making these folks have richer, more abundant lives.
These are only rules of the game that people like Barack Obama and Bill Clinton agreed with, right? I mean, it's amazing how the shift has been so dramatic that which Barack Obama claimed, at least, to agree with in 2009, 2010, now the Democrats claim it's going to kill millions of people, which we know is fear-mongering at its worst. Congressman John Rose, only a couple of minutes left. We could talk for days, but one aspect of the bill that did get a little pushback, it seems, from the right. You mentioned Second Amendment protections, and I know that the BBL, as we now call it, did eliminate the excise tax on certain aspects of suppressors and rifles and shotguns. But it did not eliminate the registration component. And there are some that were suggesting that maybe we should have gone that next step. I know we're kind of in the weeds on this, but I'm glad, because the registration component was justified in 1934 to ensure the tax was being paid. Now that there's no tax to be paid, how do we justify the registration?
Well, I agree completely, and I think if you watch this carefully, what happened is the Senate parliamentarian ruled those provisions out of order, and so then the senators put the tax provisions back in. The rules of reconciliation say that the provisions that you include in reconciliation have to pertain to either revenue or expenditures, and so the parliamentarian's ruling was that removing the registration component was beyond the scope of what we could do in reconciliation. That's what the House bill had in it, by the way, but then it just didn't make the cut on the Senate side. And that, we could get way off into the weeds about reconciliation and the process and how it works and whether we had the right parliamentarian or not. And those will be discussions, I think, to be had in the days ahead and the weeks ahead as we move toward possibly doing this again later this year, early next year. And hopefully we can gain some ground there and accomplish more of our objectives.
I mean, I know that it's the other body. I'm loath to ask you to comment on the Senate, but I mean, there is a belief that the parliamentarian could have been overruled by the VP. I mean, have you heard that?
Yes, I've heard that, and I've heard also the discussion that the majority leader on the Senate side could pick a new parliamentarian. And maybe that might happen still. So
this is not something. This is not something that we're going to drop. It's something that you feel like is going to come back up.
I think so. Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Finally, obviously, you're not only serving as a congressman and voting in favor of keeping. By the way, real quick, I know I'm all over the map here, John. So much to talk about. Just to clarify. The tax relief that we saw in 2017 was going to expire. So But this goes beyond. It's my understanding that these tax rates that we saw passed by the BBL now, they go a little further than even the rates in 2017. Do I have that right?
That's right. And, of course, you have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, Social Security tax relief.
So it's even a better package.
Credit for those who purchase American-made cars. So it does go further, and it makes most of those provisions permanent. What we have to remember is in 2017, hits the reason that we're back here doing this.
Right.
So many of those were for just a limited up until January 1st, 2026. Now almost all of these provisions become permanent.
How's the run for governor been going? I know you announced some time ago, and talk to us about it.
Absolutely. Got in back on March 20th as a Christian, conservative, outsider, farmer and business person and small business owner, and it's going well. Still don't have any competition, and we hope to keep it that way, frankly. And so we've just been working hard, been to all 95 counties, visiting with Tennesseans, finding out what they want for the future of Tennessee, and integrating it into the platform that I'm running on, and lots of work yet to do there. We're going to announce here. We announced that we've been filling out our staff, and we're going to announce our first half of the year financial results here in a couple days, and we'll try to get that information to you. And I feel like we're in a good place. And so far, no takers with respect to running against me.
The big man gets in the ring. Nobody wants to jump in there and wrestle the bear. John, come on.
Well, as Yogi Berra says, it's getting late early. And as they say about the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes, you can't win if you don't enter.
Well, John Rose getting lonely in the gubernatorial ring. He's asking for takers. No, I'm just kidding. John, thank you. Best of luck to you as you canvass the state, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you for being so available to the people of our audience.
Thank you, Matt. Always a pleasure to be on the show, and we'll keep praying for the folks in Texas.
Amen. Thank you. Congressman John Rose joining us 25 after. I'm late at Super Talk 99.7 WTN.